This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the niche details of modern warfare and underreported conflict with me, Jake Hanrahan. Today we're speaking to a man named Locke. He's a local reporter, born and raised and currently still living in Hong Kong. He's going to give us an idea of the social and legal shift that we're seeing now in the aftermath of what can only be described as Hong Kong's failed uprising, to be honest. It's a very dodgy situation. There's a lot of authoritarian laws coming in. Locke's going to give us an idea of what's actually happening there on the ground. If you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/popularfront. So we know about obviously all the clashes in 2019 in Hong Kong between, people protesting, the Frontliners against the state, trying to bring Hong Kong closer to China, the dissolution of certain freedoms and democracies there. Now it's 2021, it's a good 2 years later. What is going on right now? I know we've recently seen certain people in the press are being arrested. The Apple Daily, a pro-democracy newspaper, has been shut down. You're a local resident. You're a journalist there. You know about the situation. Maybe just fill us in. What is going on right now?
The truth is there isn't a lot going on politically. Since the enactment of the national security law last year in July, pretty much all the prominent pro-democracy politicians have been rounded up and put in jail. They have not yet been convicted of a crime, but many of them have been sitting in jail for months now, and their bail is being repeatedly denied. So, and also there's been a lot going on from China's end in enacting new laws and also bringing Hong Kong's election to a different forum, basically. If you've kept up with the news, you know that half of the Legislative Council, which is kind of like Hong Kong's parliament, has been emptied out because people were forced to resign because basically they had to take an oath and say they swear loyalty to China, which they didn't want to do. So they quit, and now they were no longer lawmakers, and they were put into jail. And so now it's a bit weird, politically speaking, in Hong Kong, because you kind of are dealing with a carcass situation. Nothing really is working. There isn't any resistance to any government policies. And so it's kind of approaching a pretty ideal form of what China would want Hong Kong's, political system to be.
It sounds like everything that the protesters said will happen is slowly starting to happen. I mean, would you say that's accurate, or is that a little bit dramatic?
I think it is kind of still... I mean, obviously a lot of things that happen has... upset many people in Hong Kong. As you said, Apple Daily has been forced to shut. There's been over 10,000 arrests related to the protests. But really, in terms of the public side of the protest, the public side of oppositional politics in Hong Kong has been put into a kind of like a headlock. Because there's also COVID, which means that you cannot protest, actually. You can't gather outside. You can't even do anything more than 4 persons outside right now without being, risking being arrested or getting fined. So I would say that it is difficult to tell. One would think that sooner or later they will have to say, okay, COVID is over. And so all of these restrictions will have to go. But obviously... I think most people know in their hearts of hearts that, even if that happens, they're going to do something else to limit your ability to do anything out in the public.
Yeah, no, definitely. Maybe explain to us the situation with the Apple Daily. What is the Apple Daily? What has happened? The reason I asked that is because I think that is kind of a perfect example of where this is all heading. You know what I mean? When you start shutting down newspapers, when you start arresting journalists, you know, it's totalitarianism characterized. There's no other word for it, in my opinion. You know, maybe just explain to us what's going on.
Apple Daily is a newspaper founded 26 years ago. Actually, it was founded by like Jimmy Lai, who is a he has been a businessman for quite some time, and his version of the story is that he started Apple Daily because of what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989, when Beijing cracked down on a student-led protest. That was quite, the biggest pro-democracy movement in China we've seen, for quite some time. And so it has been characterized as one of the most outspoken newspaper in Hong Kong. And in 2019, it definitely took on a very hardline pro-protest stand. It would go as far as telling people, suggesting people should join the protest, albeit the ones that were peaceful at the time. And also, they published a lot of editorials that were in favor of the protest. So I think their character is very, what people in Hong Kong would characterize them as deeply yellow. Yellow being the color for the pro-protest camp, and people who were anti-protest were put into the blue camp. People who were pro-police, pro-government, they are in the blue camp. So Apple Daily has been quite controversial since its establishment, basically. And I was taught in school in journalism that Apple Daily was the reason why journalism in Hong Kong changed. It became more aggressive, and it's also notorious for its paparazzi. It also ran a magazine that can be quite sleazy at times. But I think really, if you ask somebody in 2021, they would say that Apple Daily is known for being shut down for its stance, political stance. And so there's really no two ways about it. And apart from Apple Daily, after what happened to it, we've seen independent media of a smaller scale, taking steps to trying to mitigate their risks. Deleting old footage, deleting old editorials, and some outrightly just saying that they're no longer a media. And so the effect is quite widespreading and is still ongoing.
Well, maybe just backtrack a minute. Like, what actually happened to the Apple Daily? Because certain people have been arrested. It's even been closed down, right?
Yep. So there has been a rumor for a few months now that they are going to close down Apple Daily before July 1st. July 1st being the day that marks Hong Kong's return to China. And so previously, they have arrested Jimmy Lai, who owns Apple Daily, on a national security charge, and they've also arrested a few of his top-rank editors, and also raided their newsroom. I think sometime last year in August, and recently in this month. What happened was that they raided Apple Daily again, and then this time froze all their assets, saying that the media has become, in their own words, a tool of subversion or a national security threat. So they have arrested more editors and also froze the assets such that they cannot pay wages to workers, and also can no longer print the newspaper. And so they published their last newspaper on June 26th, if I'm not mistaken. And so it was quite a phenomenon because they printed 1 million copies, and what I saw was that people were queuing to buy the last issue of Apple Daily, which is a phenomenon because people in Hong Kong are not that into buying newspapers. So you see people from all walks of life, people who are construction workers, people who are, in like business attire, just queuing in the rain, which kind of romanticized the whole thing. But that's really what happened. People were trying to get a hold of a copy.
I think China said, or the police in Hong Kong said, that they only sold 20,000 copies, and then from everyone else is like, no, apparently they sold 1 million, right?
No, they printed 1 million. They definitely sold more than, I don't know, I have not seen that claim, but they definitely sold a lot because people all over the place are saying that it's sold out, and I personally saw people queuing for like a huge stack of them. It's not even like a normal shipment. They had to pull it off with like a vehicle. So that it's that crazy. So yeah.
And I think as well they arrested I think yesterday a guy called Fung Wai Kong, right? He was one of the Apple Daily journalists. He was arrested at the airport. Like, that sounds really extreme. Like, why would they bother doing that?
This is not the first time. Actually, they've made arrests at the airport against protesters and and politicians, and so it didn't really surprise me. But obviously, to people outside, it is pretty extreme. And the guy was supposedly in charge of the English version of Apple Daily, which I don't think it ran for a long time. I think it could be around a year. So he was in charge of that division, and he was trying to leave Hong Kong, and he was arrested, at the airport, which is quite scary, actually.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. A lot of people are leaving, right? Are there any estimates as to how many people have actually, fled Hong Kong? I know a lot of people are apparently going to come to England. I think our government has said people can come, but they're not exactly being very helpful with it from what I understand from a friend of mine. But there seems to be a lot of people have left, right? Is that felt? Like, can you feel that people want to leave now?
This is definitely felt. I know personally families who are leaving. But if you want hard facts, I think in the last year, Hong Kong recorded its first decrease in population size. It is the census data, is from the government. So exactly how many people has left since last year up to this point, we really don't have a figure, and we will unlikely have one. But you can see from just the census data that the population has actually shrunk, which does not really happen in Hong Kong, because there's a lot of immigration from China and from other places. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're an average Hong Kong person, families, multiple who are leaving Hong Kong, and they have pretty good steady income, a good job, place to live, and these are middle class people who are trying to say, I don't want my kids to grow up here, so I'm leaving. But there are also earlier, I think, people who are involved in the process or more prominent politicians. They like Ted Hui from the Democratic Party. These people have also left. So there is definitely a felt absence, of these people. People personally, and that they are leaving, which is pretty shocking in some sense.
Yeah. And you were talking about July 1st, right? What happens on July 1st?
July 1st is normally when the Hong Kong government tries to celebrate the return of Hong Kong from British to Chinese rule. So traditionally there is always celebrations, but this time is kind of different because this year is the 100th year of the establishment of the CCP. So actually, this chief executive is in Beijing right now, and she is among other Chinese officials for the official celebrations, and Hong Kong is left in charge by John Lee, who is the latest chief secretary, and he was previously the security minister, and he was also a cop. when he was younger.
It's hard to gauge it from the outside, just looking at the news and whatever. But would you say now that like Hong Kong has completely changed, like it went from free or whatever to something completely different now, or is it kind of in between? Like, how is it?
I mean, the average person would feel that things are different. Just yesterday, they arrested a man who had a sticker on his gate on outside his apartment that was deemed subversive. And that is definitely not something that you would expect to happen in Hong Kong, say, if you dial back 2 years ago. And also, just the general mood, I would say that, Hong Kong has always been kind of in like a awkward situation. It's not exactly, entirely capitalist. I mean, it's entirely capitalist, but it's being pulled by different powers trying to shape it into one form and the other. And it is pretty clear to me personally that one side has come out more victorious, and so Beijing has this time during COVID to really do a lot of things in Hong Kong that changes how it is basically. So yeah, I don't think we would be living in the same conditions as before.
And what happened to all the frontliners? They were very well organized. I was on the ground with them. They were extremely passionate. And now, they're nowhere to be seen. I know quite a lot of them were arrested. I guess some of them have left. I mean, is there even talk about them anymore? Like, what's the situation with them now over there?
So there has been a few high-profile arrests dealing with some of the the hardcore of the hardcores. They were called the Dragon Slayers, and they were a bit, I guess, for lack of a better word, the more militant side of the protesters, and they've been caught and they are currently in trial. So just for context, they arrested over 10,000 people, and a quarter of them has since been prosecuted. Among them, 700 plus were charged rioting. So I guess to answer your question, where are the hardliners? A lot of them are currently in custody or in court, and some I know have left for Taiwan and for the U.S. and other places. And so it is, and also all the forms of communication with the Telegram and Signal, especially Telegram, it's gone. No longer anybody is trying to do anything on Telegram because they have arrested people who were admins of Telegram groups, and they've cracked into some of their messages and some of their contacts. So I think that's one reason why people are no longer trying to organize anything on Telegram.
Jesus. Yeah, you mentioned there Taiwan, saying some frontliners have gone there. I've heard rumors that there are frontliners that have gone to Taiwan to train like, paramilitarily. I don't know if it's just rumors or bullshit. I don't know, but have you heard anything like that?
No, but I've read reports about how at the group I mentioned, the Dragon Slayers, some of them have actually landed in Taiwan. But from what I've read, it seems like they are trying to find bearings, they're trying to get a hold of the situation and see how they can survive in this new circumstances. So I am not sure if that is true. And also, I think even if you look at the most violent episodes of 2019, it was pretty sure that just judging on equipment and firepower, there's no way the protesters could have overpowered the police, because they had armored vehicles, they had guns, they had all sorts of weaponry. So I personally do not think it is that far out just yet, you know.
I mean, when I was speaking to them, I think a thing that a lot of them knew almost, it was like they knew they wouldn't win in the sense of, oh, we'll topple the state. But to me, they were just like, we have to fight, even if we don't win. You know what I mean? I did hear that kind of talk. That was quite interesting. Tell me about this Dragon Slayers group. I've been out the loop. This is the first time I've heard of this group. So you said it's like a particularly militant group of the Frontliners. Like, what do you know about them?
I think they were involved in a few incidents, whereas there were claims of them attacking the police, and there were also claims of them having, you know, actual weapons.
What firearms?
I think that was the case. There was an arrest in an area in Hong Kong where they caught somebody with a firearm, and so from like I have never had personal I've never talked to them before because I wasn't that into the part where I wasn't that into all that part of contacting with the hotline or the hardcore protester. I was more involved in other work, but from what I know, they were involved in some of these incidents, and some of them were involved in the PolyU siege, where the police were besieging a university in Hong Kong, the Polytechnic, and in that instance, a lot of them were actually arrested, and that led to them kind of like the demise of them, because most of them got arrested, and some of them actually subsequently fled to other places. So I don't think they are, just judging from that, I don't think they have the capacity to operate in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Do people still talk about them though? Because it was at the time such an insane event, such a big deal. I remember even friends I had in Hong Kong were saying like, don't bother coming. They're not gonna throw Molotovs or anything. And then like 2 weeks later, it was like chaos. You know what I mean? And even people in Hong Kong I knew were very shocked. I mean, does that kind of, I don't want to sound romantic, but does that, like, the legend of the Frontliners live on, if you like? Or is it just, like, done? Everyone's forgotten it?
I don't think people have forgotten about it. It's just that in many, many sense, people are in their shells right now. Because people don't want to talk about, not even the most, eye-catching or the most violent or the most, surprising or most impactful part of the protest. People are just trying to not really talk about the protest in general in the public. People may discuss what happened in private, but obviously on social media and everything, people are not as willing to talk about it because just they don't know who's going to rat them out. Because another piece of interesting info for you, so they have an NSL, National Security Division in the Hong Kong Police right now, and they claim to have received 100K in intel, 100,000 tips, if you like, to that particular department in 6 months. So people are paranoid and they don't want to, talk about things.
I mean, that's really dark. Like, that is, I know you're saying like, oh, it's not like really, really bad there now. Like you feel okay to talk openly about the situation, but the fact people are scared to even speak in the street, really, and sounds like they're worried about informers. I mean, that's like Stalin level shit. You know what I mean? That is very different to what Hong Kong was just 2 years ago.
Well, let me tell you this. I always feel like there's this strange parallel, Like, I can still go to the shops, I can use my credit card, I can do all these things, but deep down in my mind, I know, there's this, there's this worry inside myself that, you say the wrong things or you talk to the wrong person, you could land in jail. So I don't know how to describe this strange feeling to you, except that because I've also been reading a lot about the Soviet Union, and I see a lot of parallels in there. Like, it's not like you were unable to live alive in Soviet Union times, but it is a strange kind of life, and you have to contend with a lot of the strange complexities that comes with it.
How does that feel for you? You were local, you're born and raised there, right? You grew up there, and now, even as a reporter, but like now, even just as a person, life is very different for you now. You got to watch what you do, watch what you say. Even though I know you don't hold any militant, you're not a militant, you're not violent, nothing like that. Even then, you still have to kind of watch what you're saying. Like, how does that just feel on a personal level to you?
It is a very strange experience, and I mean, this is, I think, one of the main reasons why a lot of people are leaving, if not contending about leaving, is because you feel like, if there's a ticking time bomb or there's threats everywhere that, 1 minute you can be living a perfectly normal life and the next minute you're not, And especially for journalists, right? Because some of them have worked with foreign media outlets, and some of them are still working with foreign media outlets. And if you know that the national security law actually has a lot of ways to frame somebody as how do they colluding with foreign forces, and so it is very, for lack of a better word, I can only say it is very strange. I can do all these very normal things that I've been doing all my life, but then there's always a hint of danger in everything. So the day Apple Daily got into trouble recently, I texted my friend who is a worker there. I've known him for a few years, and he's a journalist that I, very much respect. And I think one of the things he said really just encapsulate everything. He said, thank you for your concerns. For now, I'm fine. The for now part really is what really kills it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel bad for you, man. Like, I mean, certainly I'm not saying that where I live in Britain is like some kind of den of freedom. God knows our government is really trying to erode our freedoms, but no one cares. Everybody just cares about Instagram and pretending they have money, unfortunately. But it does sound very sad, and it does sound very worrying. Even being there 2 years ago, I was openly filming whatever we wanted to. There was no restrictions. Now that even the public has restrictions, it's like, wow, what a U-turn. You know what I mean? How far do you think this will go? Do you think, is there any signs that maybe this will just be it now, and they'll leave it as it is? Or do you think maybe this will continue? This will get more, things will get more strict, maybe?
I mean, there are incentives for Beijing to be extra hotline right now because it's the 100-year celebrations, and they don't want anything to go wrong. That's very much one of the reasons. And the second being that I think Hong Kong is weird for them because Hong Kong is still connected to a lot of other places. You don't need a VPN to access most of the websites on the web. But then also it means that it's harder to get a grip on Hong Kong because it's not an enclosed environment. So it's very hard to tell. I think what we are really anticipating to see is how all these national security cases would pan out, because frankly there has not been precedents. And also some of the cases are a little bit more ambiguous. So I think that outcome would really set the mood for the years to come.
Just from an outsider's perspective, it doesn't look good. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't look good. And I think if the kind of track record of the CCP is anything to go by, I can't see that they're going to do any reversal of this situation in Hong Kong right now. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't know. It doesn't look good. As a journalist, how do you feel doing your job now? Are you not worried that, you're just going to get to a point where you might have to leave?
I think most of the journalists in Hong Kong would not say they regretted ever getting into this occupation. So what we are trying to do is just to continue doing the things we've always been doing, because Hong Kong has had a very strong journalism industry, and so some of the most open systems in which people were able to do investigative journalism and very good journalism for years. Obviously, some of that tools has been taken away from us, but I think people who are staying are, trying to continue to tell the Hong Kong story, because in some sense, from an outside perspective, it's very easy to say that, oh, Hong Kong is dead. If you go on MIT, 90% of what they're saying about Hong Kong is that, oh, it's fucked, I mean, it is fucked. But, people are still living here. So, and for as long as there's somebody living here, you got to tell their story. So I guess that's what we're trying to do. But obviously there are concerns among us that, that I don't think can be addressed in any time soon. So everybody just have to make their own decisions, right?
Sure. And you are a local. You're not an expat. You're not someone that's in and out, lives most of their life in Brooklyn or whatever. You're in Hong Kong. You've been in Hong Kong. What do you want people to know about the situation? Because like you just said, everyone's saying, oh, well, it's fucked. It is fucked, but there's more to it, Like, what would you want people to know?
I mean, I would, it is there's a language barrier to read about Hong Kong, obviously, because the writings in English mostly deals with the broader topics, and also it kind of generalizes a lot of things. So, but I mean, Hong Kong is still producing a lot of cultural products, right? There's people making music, there's people making movies, there's people making documentaries and all kinds of stuff. So, I would like people not to treat Hong Kong people as like a dead subject, They are still living, they are still creating things, they're trying to, make the best out of the current situation. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird, because when I read about Myanmar, there's also the same barrier for me, because I can only read what is in English from there, and it's very hard to get a grip on the local situation,
Yeah, totally. What's the situation now with the police? I remember at the time being there, they very openly, clearly wanted not only to stop the protesters, but to kind of get revenge on them, specifically the English expats that were still there. Very nasty bastards. Like, I saw them. They wanted to hurt people, it's very clear, but it's an open conflict in a way, so that's how it goes. But what's this situation like now? Are the police kind of chilled out? Are people engaging with them again, or, what's it like?
I don't think people who cut ties with the police in 2019 is going to, be friendly with them anytime soon. Judging from the experience from 2014 when, there was another protest, the Occupy Central thingy. Back then there was a lot of rift between the common people and the police, and I think that's very much amplified currently. But what the police is trying to do is they are trying to do better PR. What is funny, so this is ex-TV anchor. He worked for TVB. TVB being one of the most pro-establishment TV stations out there. And he's now police, and what they've done, comically, to my taste, is that they've sent him to this, assignment where he would, act as a reporter and tell you what is happening. And they actually send a camera crew, and they live stream on Facebook and on everything. And that, to me, is deeply worrying, because they are trying a different tactic. They're trying to not only be a player in law enforcement, they are trying to be a player in the narrative and in the rhetorics. And that's kind of worrying for me.
Yeah, that is very... I don't want to say it again, but that's very Stalin-esque, right? Like that whole, let's just fake it and do all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? That is very odd.
It's funny to some extent, though. It's funny that you try, because they've actually covered a few protests when there were still protests happening late last year, and it's interesting because their camera is actually just pointing at the journalists, because the journalists would be filming the police and what they were doing most of the time, and also film. I mean, they always say it's unfair because the media only films the police, which is not the case. Judging by the abundance of footage of protesters doing stuff.
Definitely not the case.
Everywhere, But the police was very much shooting at the, with the cameras at the media, which thought was very funny. It's funny in a very Adam Curtis sense,
Yeah, no, definitely. I can see the funny side of it. I guess the worry is, though, that essentially they're kind of been sent by the state. You know what I mean? And I think even though that is funny, it tells you what the state wants people to see. Yeah. You see what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's very much them trying to set up this new narrative, and they have been trying to push this fake news thing among the pro-establishment side of the lawmakers. They've been pushing a fake news law, and also the police have been doing all this campaign about fake news and what they see is the truth and what is not, and so. The worrying thing is that the government is actually going to do this. They're going to set up a fake news law, which I think is a thing in Singapore.
What would the fake news law be? Like, what do they want to do with that?
Honestly, we don't know because there's no provisions. It's not an actual law or actual text you can read. Right now, it's more like a gimmick or like a punchline. Or like just a thing, they throw it out and they suggest it should be done. The same thing happened to when they tried to push for a law against insulting police officers, and so but they didn't need to do that now, right? But for the fake news law, it's very much uncertain. But there is some law like that in Singapore. And so one can only judge from that.
Yeah, no, it's not a good sign at all. Maybe just explain to us what the situation now is politically, because all the main lawmakers, we saw that situation where people were literally dragged out of the parliament. We did an episode about that. What has replaced them?
Okay, so the current situation is that the Legislative Council is half empty because the pro-democracy politicians quit and then they were arrested, basically. So now the parliament is half empty, but there hasn't been a re-election because there was supposed to be an election last year, which they postponed because of COVID. And during COVID, the government reenacted new laws or changed up the rules of the election such that they have reduced the number of people who are directly elected, but bumped up the people who are elected by different functional constituency in Hong Kong, which is mostly dominated by pro-government politicians. So they basically, judging from the results of 2019 elections, where the pro-democracy camp won 80+% of the seats, I think they very much judge from that experience and say, this is not going to work out in our favor, and so what can we do in the meantime? So they postponed the election, changed up the law, such that in the coming election, they probably would, have no problem winning most of the seats.
Yeah. I don't think that will be a struggle for them if that situation happens. It's not looking great. Is there anything else you want to mention about Hong Kong before we wrap this one up?
One thing I'd like to note is how on Twitter I saw a lot of people throwing shit at the protesters because they waved like the US flag. A lot of tankies were upset with that. I like, the problem is that, a lot of these things are misinterpreted in once it's taken out of context, In fact, a lot of these people don't even know what that entails because they haven't had, a lot of intense, education in politics. They don't even know what is, reactionary. They can't really tell what does it mean to be a right winger, you know. So yeah, just people should, you know the context before they make a lot of judgments on things like that.
Well, yeah, no, totally. I had a little bit of a back and forth online with some, frankly, stupid, tankies. In my opinion, they're dumb. They're dumb people, scum and dumb, like awful people. And these people saying, look, they're flying the American flag and all of this stuff. And even other people that weren't even tankies, like, oh, why are they flying the American flag? It's like, look, they're in Hong Kong. A very powerful government, the CCP, wants to take away their freedoms, which we are seeing happening right now, so they weren't wrong. And they are going, which country maybe will help us? Maybe the US will. Okay, let's fly the US flag. Let's try and get the attention of some Americans. Why the fuck should they care if that triggers some fucking internet political idiots? Why should they care? Their fucking freedoms and their lives are at threat. Oh no, don't put the American flag up. Some people on Twitter might get angry. Fuck anyone that's saying that, And there's other people that were saying, well, yeah, they want a revolution, but, they just want like a neoliberal order. So fucking what? So what if that's what they want? I'm not saying that's what I want. I'm not saying that's what anyone should want. Who gives a fuck? It's up to them. Their lives are in danger. They're on the front line fighting. You don't get to say what you fucking want their revolution to be about from the fucking safety of your Manhattan apartment, These people make me sick. And they don't know about conflict. It's the worst thing when these like tanky fucking idiots think they can talk about war. They can't. They need to shut the fuck up and stay in Manhattan. That's what I got to say about them. But you know what I mean? It was very enraging for me to be on the ground, seeing this shit on Twitter. And then I actually said in our documentary, I said to one lad, I was like, oh, people are calling you fascist because you have the American flags up. And his response was, he literally laughed. He was like, what? He's like, that's ridiculous. Like, and it's like, yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. What all that internet chatter, it's like 1% of the world, if that,
Yeah, and I've seen people almost beating up a guy for raising a colonial flag, the colonial British Hong Kong flag. But that, they don't care about that. They don't see that. Just be a little bit more understanding. Try to read a bit more before judging. That's what I want to say.
Absolutely. And good luck out there, man. Just to have it on the record, I don't want to get you in trouble. You're happy for us to put this out, yeah?
Yeah. No worries about that.
All right, man. Well, good luck out there, man. Thank you very much for doing this. This is really interesting.
Good talking to you, Jake.
That was Locke, a local reporter in Hong Kong, still in Hong Kong, giving us an idea of the country kind of post-failed uprising, if you like. Doesn't look like a good situation. If you like what we're doing here at Popular Front, please do consider supporting us at patreon.com/Popular Front. You get bonus episodes, access to the community Discord. You can get your name credited in episodes and on documentaries, narrated articles. We've got a whole series up there that's Patreon only. There's loads of stuff there. Patreon.com/Popular Front. Remember, we are 100% grassroots. We do not accept money from any corporate sponsorship or anyone that treats their staff like shit or anything like that. Sponsors this episode, Oracle Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, USA. They're an independent coffee business selling only fair trade products. See them at 3875 Southwest Bond Avenue 97239. Tell them Popular Front sent you. The episode is also sponsored by Grindcore House, a pair of independent coffee shops in Philadelphia, USA. One in South, one in West. Find them on socials at Grindcore House. The episode is also sponsored by Propagandopolis, an outlet selling and writing about historical conflict propaganda from around the world. Buy prints at propagandopolis.com. Use the promo code PopularFront10 for 10% off. Find us on social media. Instagram, it's either at popular.front or at popularfront_. Popular Front _ is the backup. Instagram.com/popular.front. Twitter is Popular Front CO. YouTube, youtube.com/Popular Front. If you want to follow me on anything, anywhere, just at Jake_Hanrahan, HANRAHAN. What else? Music in this episode, the intro was by Home and the outro was by Sam Black. You can hear his music at samblackpf.com. Thank you to the high tier Patreons. They are Dan Ross, Thumper, Lisa Milgram, Lupita Valens, Bradley Davies, Pete Hesher, RX, A. Nickel, Manny, Travis Lieberman, Cherry, Ben Marshall, Dallas Dunn, LD50 Seattle, MJ, K. Glitter Vulcan, Meredith Waters, Bethany Swarvland, Adam H, Larson 8669, Karante, Bjorn Kirsten, Diamond Steen, Jacob, Michael O'Connor, Zach Packard, Todd Cravens, Alexander, Nicholas Butter, Ron Swanson, JD, Jav, Ian Froese, James Colley, Tynan Dali, Michael Akakan, Ethan, Fitz Madrid, Ed Coulthard, Johnny LaFleur, Clayton Taylor, Mike Barone, Ben, Liam Williams, Chris Cusimano, Degenerate Zero Alpha, Giorgio Orani, DR, Trey Nance, Amy R, Rubicon, Frank Austin, Amelia Me, Nawaiz, Christina Rivetti, Freya Northman, Ali Hunter, Moody Al Rashid, Bill Wilson, Andrew Hurley, Vida Provost, Brian McLaughlin, Tom Lochrin, Young Wasabi, Tony Bin, Adam Bergsnyder, JL, Stephen Davila, Anthony Kabarak, Dan Dunham, Fletcher Tate, Chad Walker, Diana Gorvanek, Lawrence Abrahams, Peter McCormack, Emily Molly, Axel Iverson, Christopher Martin, Ryan Sandercock and Maurice Zumbul. Thank you all so much. Without you lot, honestly, I would not be able to keep this afloat. Like I said, we do not take corporate sponsorship or any of that fucking nonsense. Thank you very much. Please do support us at patreon.com/popularfront.